Growth Pod is brought to you by Genero, a leading growth agency in the Nordics. We interview marketing experts, business leaders, and entrepreneurs to uncover the stories and strategies behind profitable growth.
Today I'm joined by serial entrepreneur Fredrik Skantze, who's a co-founder and CEO of Funnel. Funnel is a Swedish SaaS company that's raised over 120 million euros to build a leading marketing data hub that helps teams around the world better understand their marketing performance. Welcome to the show, Fredrik.
Thank you.
So really excited to have you on and to start digging into kind of your background, Funnel's background, and this kind of incredible growth journey that you're on, headed towards an IPO, I presume. But before we get into all of that, could you quickly, for our listeners, explain what is it exactly that Funnel does and what kind of companies or teams should be using Funnel?
Absolutely. So we work in intersection of marketing and data. So digital marketing now has essentially become marketing, with all the big budgets being digital. And that's great. Now marketing for the first time can really be accountable for driving revenue in a company. But to do that, you need to have a platform in place to collect all your data and to be able to measure and put it together and see how things are going. And that's what we do. And it's both in advertisers, in all different verticals. The digital marketing teams use us. Often they use us in conjunction with the more technical teams in the data warehouse team as well. And at media agencies that then in turn help their clients, which are advertisers, with their marketing data.
Okay, so it's both companies, I presume both smaller companies and also these big enterprises are leveraging Funnel to better, to store and organize their data.
Yeah, we serve pretty much every vertical and everything from small e-commerce companies to large, iconic, new economy companies with tens of thousands of employees. That's
pretty exciting, and I think I was reading about as I was reading about Funnel and kind of the background. One thing that was really interesting, I'd say, was that it was kind of a spin-off from another company that you founded, Quaya, which is a Facebook advertising tool, which at the time I believe you processed 1% of all the spend on Facebook, which was pretty global spend. So that's pretty incredible. And you co-founded that company. You reached this elusive product market fit that everyone wants to get to. You were growing. You'd raised money and you were growing very rapidly, and still you decided to take this pivot and focus on Funnel, which clearly was the right choice in retrospect. But can you talk a little bit about that decision that led you to, take that decision, even though you had something that was very successful on your hands? You decided to kind of risk it all, or how did you think about that decision?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it was a very difficult decision. And as you said, so we really believed in Facebook at the time. We were really early when Facebook advertising was quite unproven, but we thought Facebook would go the same journey as Google. Turned out that was the case. We built a tool to specifically help sort of smaller advertisers with a tool, make ads, optimize their ads, and had really, really strong tractions with that, with thousands of customers. And that whole category of a Facebook advertising tool was going to, it looked like it was emerging to more of a social advertising platform to add other verticals like Twitter and LinkedIn, and that's what most of those companies did. We really wanted to be a large company, and we spent a lot of time thinking about it, and we also spoke a lot to our customers, and what we heard from them is that Facebook actually was really important to them, and they wanted us to focus on that. But Facebook, we knew from the beginning, we're also building these tools. It didn't feel like the right setup. There was a big market created, but it felt like, just creating ads on Facebook. Over time, Facebook should really, be best set up to do that well. And so we wanted to find a space that was part of this new market that was created, but where the large companies like Google and Facebook didn't give something away for free. And so we spent a lot of time talking to our customers to understand kind of what are really your problems, and are there any sort of unsolved problems? And what they kept coming back to was, there's lots of companies that help us make ads and optimize ads. But when it comes to like figuring out how things are going, like my P&L for my marketing, and then being able to drill into that, everybody had a spreadsheet. We said, okay, that's interesting. And we couldn't find any company who was doing this. And we asked them, okay, if we do it, will you buy it? And they said, yeah, we'll buy it. Just build it. And we said, okay, this makes a lot of sense. Like, if we solve this problem, at that time it was e-commerce companies, gaming companies, app companies that cared about digital performance, but we could see how this was going to get even larger. So we decided then to do a pivot. And as you said, this was pretty late in our development, and but we did it with a lot of confidence and with a strong team in place. And we said, with that, we're going to build this new feature we're going to quickly be able to find product market fit and do this.
That's interesting. I think I remember someone saying something that every time there's some kind of function or task that's performed by companies using a spreadsheet, there's probably a business SaaS opportunity there to come in and replace that. You mentioned product market fit. So you had this clear problem. You've identified this clear problem. You still had money in the bank to go ahead and start building this new feature. Was it then just a matter of, okay, you built this, and as soon as you got it out, you launched it, showed it to customers, they said, yes, this was exactly what we wanted. You got to this product market fit, or was it, what was the journey like to actually bringing it to market?
Well, our expectation was it's going to take a year to build. And then we can launch it, and then we're, have product market fit and can kind of get customers to just start using it and start growing. And we defined the problem, as I explained, and our previous tool was for the SME market, for small advertisers. For like $100, you could swipe your credit card and sort of buy it, and that didn't exist in that space. It was totally product led, and our expectation was that was going to be the case with this product as well. So I think there were two things we learned. So one is actually every new product that you launch, you have to again search for product market fit, and there is a process and it takes time. And so we thought it would take a year. It took 2 years. Like, it took us like 9 months to get a prototype out, or like a beta out. But then we actually spent over a year iterating until we really started to feel like, okay, now we have product market fit. So that took a bit longer than we thought. Now, the other thing that happened was we thought it would just be small companies, because small companies, they have the spreadsheet. Large companies, they have BI tools, so they have this solved. Turns out the really, really small companies have bigger problems than reporting. But the mid-sized companies, and even large, like really large enterprises, they had the BI tools and dashboards, but they couldn't get the data in there. So they were still sitting with a spreadsheet, even at Fortune 500 companies. So the market was much larger than we thought, and the opportunity with larger customers than we thought. So we sort of pivoted away originally. So we thought that it was going to be the small customer, the SME customers that we were going to serve. Turns out they actually had bigger problems than reporting. Their business wasn't working so well. But mid-sized and large companies, even though they had these BI tools, they couldn't get the data in. So they were still sitting with spreadsheets, even at Fortune 500 companies. And so the market was much larger than we thought. It was mid-sized and large companies that we could serve. So then we ended up having more of a sales-led motion to them. So we changed our go-to-market, and that turned out to work really well. And then we sort of really saw the business take off.
That's really interesting, because I feel that someone said that go-to-market problems are typically, or product market fit problems are typically misdiagnosed as go-to-market problems. So how were you thinking about those very two different stages? Was there a clear moment, any clear metrics where you said, okay, now we've got, we've achieved product market fit, but maybe we just need to change from our original plan who we are going to market it to? Like, how were you thinking about those two things, and not maybe letting them, kind of confusing one for the other, if that kind of makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question, but to some extent, they are a little bit interlinked. If you go for an SME market, then, the product you need has to be more out of the box. If you go for, an enterprise market, the product has to be more flexible, and you have to customize for each customer. So they are somewhat interlinked, but in general, I think we were pretty good at saying, look, we don't have product market fit. We're going to do some go to market to get customers in, but we're going to wait with scaling until we really got good product market fit.
And when you had reached that and you had kind of made, like you said, the market turned out to be much bigger than you had anticipated, but this was still, many, many years ago. Did you already then have a sense of how big this market was going to be? Or how did you think about the potential, and how did you then start calibrating, the funding needs and so on, in accordance to that?
Well, we never really, we thought that the market for this primarily originally was going to be e-commerce companies and media agencies. Gaming and app companies were a little bit different. So we primarily for us, it was e-commerce companies and agencies, media agencies. I remember investors asking us, what is the market size? We're debating it. Like, for us, just that market was huge, and because it's global, and there's a huge opportunity. So we were never worried about it. And so we just kept building and selling into them. And at that time, sort of like 40% of all advertising spend was online, and the e-commerce were spending all their money online, gaming app companies, but the large budgets, TV budgets were offline on TV, and large brands were dabbling with social media. But then the shift came, and it went really fast over a number of years, from 40% to 70%. And now TV budgets are on YouTube, and Netflix is going to launch advertising-based system and so on, right? So, and then suddenly it's every company. And so that market has gradually become much, much larger for us.
So you were, timing-wise, it turned out to be pretty fortunate timing for you. You were kind of in the early stages of this market as it was really beginning to take off.
Yeah, and absolutely. At the time, the global digital advertising spend was maybe 150 billion, and now it's over 600 billion. So you just get pulled with this market, which is great.
I want to go back to, because you said something interesting, which was back in the quiet days, you realized that marketing, or the transition that kind of happened with digital marketing, was that marketing was now for the first time kind of being accountable for driving revenue. And you've been kind of working in, or at least observing and being very close to this whole digital marketing space for well over a decade. How would you say that it has changed from, going back to the early days? There's the famous quote, half of my advertising spend is wasted. I don't know which half it is. Then Google came as the first big player and told advertisers and agencies that we can show how much you get. We can show the actual ROI of every single dollar that you spend. So could you kind of give an overview? I know this is a broad question, but could you give a kind of an overview of the digital marketing landscape, how it's evolved, and maybe also what do you see in the future? Because there are, it's changing from regulatory, technological reasons. So how do you kind of see the past and the future of this digital market that's grown to be, like you said, incredibly huge, hundreds of billions of dollars globally?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I mean, there was a huge shift. I mean, one part of originally what made digital so fantastic was that both within the platforms, like a platform like Google or a platform like Facebook, Google with the search keywords or Facebook with the audiences you could target to a much bigger degree because they had so much data. And then you could measure, I mean, with, an analytics software on your web, you could see basically where the clicks came from and what was driving your traffic. So, and then you could put your money there, and, that made a lot of sense. So that was pretty transformational. If you compare that to like running a TV ad, running print, it's quite hard to really understand, where am I getting the best return? Now, with mobile tracking being greatly reduced with the changes that Apple has done, and with third-party cookies now, more and more being restricted, there is actually now sort of a going back slightly to that previous world. I wouldn't say that we're going back all the way. You can still see what traffic comes into your web and so on, but you have less information. And as a result, but at the same time, all these platforms that you use have much more data than like a TV station. TV station, when you ran your ads, and you might get some sort of offline, reporting on what the audience was. But in these platforms, you lots and lots of data, and you have lots of platforms, and you have a lot of other systems with data. So you have much more data, but you actually now have to do more work to put that data together, and also not just use deterministic approaches to determining what the cause and effect of your advertising is, but more probabilistic or statistical methods, which is much harder, right? So already with digital marketing is much more analytical and much more technical than regular sort of more brand oriented or direct response sort of offline marketing. And you have a pretty big tech stack. And now you're taking that one step further. You have to understand algorithms and all the stuff. So it is a really big change for marketing. And it is actually a very, very hard problem to solve. There's no right answer. But we already know that, like, just looking at clicks didn't tell the whole story. If you have a channel that generates a lot of awareness, but you actually can't click on it, well, it's never going to give you any recognition for clicks, but it's going to drive awareness. So we already knew it. I mean, like, take traditional TV, if you're a digital business, you might still spend a lot of money on TV. And so you still have to take these things in account. And now I think it's the time. Marketers are now recognizing they need to put together systems for doing this, and sort of more scientifically approach it. And that's a really big step for market.
Right, you said it's a big step. Do you think that what do you think the impact will be on overall advertising effectiveness? Could this be a blessing in disguise, as in marketers who could previously just rely, like you said, on attribution, these deterministic modeling, now have to think about, which, as you mentioned, did not take into consider the whole picture. It looked at short-term results mainly. So do you think that this could actually push the marketing industry into creating models that are more, I would say, holistic, and there could be actually a positive impact on overall measurement and performance? Or how do you see this kind of playing out?
Yeah, I think so. I think over time, but I think it'll take quite a lot of time. It's hard for the advertisers to understand what really works and what doesn't work with respect to measurement. And so you need to build that capability partially in-house, and then partially find really good vendors to help you with that, I would say. But I think it's going to push us forward, yes. And I think there's, so much more data available now, so it's possible to do things that weren't possible before.
This may be kind of a leading question, but do you think that this is an opportunity for a tool like Funnel where the companies or advertisers, agencies are going to become even more reliant on these types of tools to better collect, analyze, understand their data and use that to make these decisions? Or how do you think of, these big platforms like a Meta or a Google? They're obviously thinking about this as well, and they're coming up with their own tools, and they don't want to be squeezed out. They want to they want to still get a lot of that piece of that pie. So how do you think this will play out in your kind of role in this?
So I think the big platforms like Facebook and Google and so on, have a huge amount of data and are incredibly good at now optimizing advertising within their platform, and are going to be the absolutely best at that. That's partially why we didn't want to build an ads tool for those platforms. I think they're going to own that. So I think and they're keep driving it, and I think are keep driving performance. But going back to when Funnel was originally started, like what you want is to look at all your data in all your systems and then make decisions. And you're going to want to do that in an impartial way. And so I think inherently it's hard for them even to do that, because they all compete with each other. So they don't share each other's data, and therefore they can't sort of make decisions about what works and what doesn't work with their competitors. And they probably, advertisers probably want something impartial anyway. So, and then going back to your question, what does this mean for us? Well, you're going to need more algorithms, and you're going to need more, techniques to analyze your data and your performance, be it, marketing mix modeling, be it sort of unified marketing measurement, using AI to do this. But the core to do any of those things is that you have all your data in a business ready format, so that it's available, it's cleaned, it's normalized, it's stitched together, and it's correct, and it works, and it's up to date to the minute. And that's what we do. And so, I think what we do is just becomes more and more important. And it's going to be used in more and more ways.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, let's transition from the big picture kind of macro or the market to funnel. And one thing that I read that I thought was very interesting was your decision at Funnel to get rid of bonuses and commissions. And I guess this was company wide, so that includes sales, which has conventional wisdom says salespeople need to be motivated with commissions or somehow to go out and close deals. So can you talk about what led you to make that decision, and what kind of results have you seen as a result of that?
Absolutely. So one of the core culture values of Funnel is teamwork and collaboration. And we felt like there was a little bit of distrust of sales in the company with respect to, well, they're just closing the deal to get the commission check, and they're only focused on that. We also felt like, they were the only teams in the go-to-market motion that were compensated with a bonus. Everybody else had a fixed salary. But in closing a deal, you had an account executive with a bonus. You had a solutions consultant and sort of pre-sales engineering. And you had a number of other roles. Maybe product was involved, and like these people were working late hours to close deals and help customers and do trials, and there wasn't really any difference in which one worked the hardest. I felt really it was strange that then, okay, we closed the customer, okay, well now you get a bonus check to the AE, and everybody else gets an emoji in Slack, and what we boiled down to then is that we thought, we don't feel like that actually with a sophisticated sale like this is, it shouldn't be necessary. We want intrinsically motivated people who really want to do the right thing. And actually it takes away sort of a lot of stress as well, that you have to make your number to pay your mortgage and all the stuff. So, and we also found that there was a lot of squabbling about leads, who gets what's leads, and the comp plan and changes to the comp plan. And then, like the economy slows down a little bit and it's harder to meet your numbers. And then like there's a big ask to change the comp plan. And it's like, okay, well, why do we, like, if you're sort of pushing around so that everybody sort of makes their number, why don't we just pay people a proper amount of money? And again, this was not about saving money. I actually think we pay more for our sales organization because we pay them their full commission every month. And in most companies, salespeople, I think maybe 70% of the quota is met. So it's not about saving money, but it's about getting everybody focused in the same direction, everybody working with same sort of long-term incentives. And so that's why we did it. Yes.
It seems very like a very thoughtful and reasonable decision. And like you said, you didn't do it to save money, so you haven't done that. But what kind of impact have you seen on, the numbers and also maybe the kind of qualitative, like how people are, has it increased collaboration across the different functions?
Yeah. So what people said was, this is crazy. Especially in the US, everyone says it's crazy. You're not going to be able to hire salespeople or good salespeople. The really good salespeople you have are going to leave because they can make more money than somewhere else. And the ones you have are going to be not motivated and going to sell less. And we haven't seen that play out. We've been able to attract really good salespeople. People, when you really speak to it, they think it made a lot of sense. We have really high retention. We have really high retention across the company, but we have really high retention in sales. I would almost say it's the opposite. Like once people are used to the fact that they get paid every month, it's quite hard to go away to another company where they say, yeah, if you sell, you get a little more. Well, can I trust? So I think that it works pretty well. The whole squabbles about leads doesn't happen in Funnel. There's none of that. No talk about commission plans. If we change sales strategy, everybody gets online. What can we do? Move forward. When COVID hit and there weren't very many leads, people said, can I work as customer success? Can we reduce churn? So all that thing really worked. Now, that having been said, and I sometimes talk about this, and I talk about intrinsic motivation, and I talk about, how, like, the research says that, if you're going to perform a complex task and you give people a bonus, then actually they perform worse than, and in small repetitive tasks, they perform better. So, all of that. Now, with that, almost, people are really interested. I get lots of feedback when I talk about this at conferences and other things. And a lot of people, but I think relatively few people do this. And it's a big change. I don't think everybody should run away and do this. I think you should think really careful about it. You can only do so many things different than everybody else. For us, it was important. We did it. I would say, requires, I would say, more management. Bonuses for salespeople is a little bit self-managing. And I think you have to sort of be a little bit tighter in how you manage your teams. But you probably should be anyway. And this sort of, I think, drives that. And I think the good things coming out of it are very good. So, yeah.
Have you made any other kind of, going against conventional wisdom? Did this experience made you look at some other things that are, commonly held beliefs or standard practices and go like, maybe we should do that. We should rethink that as well. Or is it more of a, like you said, you can only do so many things. You can only be different in so many ways. So have you made any other kind of, convention defying decisions?
I mean, I think what we have done is we have a clear view of what our culture is, and we really believe in our culture, and we spend a lot of time talking about it, and we sort of live up to it. Now, but what I would say is that in general, you can build like a strong culture, and I think that's important. But if to build a culture or a way of working that's very, very different from everybody else, I think there are advantages because it gels the company and everybody sort of likes that you look different, and it's a bit of a belonging. But it actually makes it also really hard to hire people into the company because, and especially sort of more senior people, because they're used to operating in a sort of modern, certain way of working. And when they come in, then it sort of goes, lots of things they do goes counter to the culture, and that actually makes it harder to sort of move fast, hire people, and sort of things. So I think you should be very careful. I think you should figure out the things that are really important to you, and do those different. But otherwise, there's also like a playbook that kind of works. And probably where you want to innovate the most is with your product as opposed to with how you build a company. I think that would be my general guide.
That's interesting. For some reason, I've never thought of the fact that if you have a very distinct culture, hiring seniors will become a huge bottleneck because you're asking people with decades of experience to come in and do something very differently. But that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of culture and company building, you have a lot of work experience and study experience from the U.S. and in Europe. So, is there anything that you think that we as Europeans or people from the Nordic countries should learn from the Americans about, or the North Americans about building companies and vice versa? Is there anything kind of like lessons that you've been able to take from kind of get the best of both worlds?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. So, yes, I spent about 12 years in the US, and I worked for 6 years in Silicon Valley. And then I spent sort of 7 years in Europe, in London, before coming to Stockholm. And when I came back, and we sort of started this company, speaking to investors in Stockholm, and they said, okay, it's great that you're starting a SaaS company. Looks like you have traction. So let's talk about the funding, and then what we think you should do is maybe run it for another year here in Europe, and then why don't you take the family and move back to San Francisco, and sort of run the company from there, because that's where everything is happening and it's the place to be, and so on. And I remember, first of all, thinking like, what, I've actually worked there and I know what it's like to be there, and you're only talking about it. And I know that, when you're there, you sit in an office park somewhere and you double down on what you do. The great engineers in Europe, especially in the Nordic countries, in Stockholm, that can help you build stuff. And, I think the level of ambition that was just a low level of ambition. I think you can build a category-defining global SaaS company based off a country like Stockholm. Just like 150 years ago, companies like ABB or Ericsson or Volvo were founded in, for example, Sweden, and really conquered the world, right? So I want to come back to that, right? Now, that having been said, yeah, absolutely. Especially when we started, like, over 10 years ago, there were lots of things that we weren't as good at in Europe. Now, as I said, software development engineering, I think we're actually quite strong. It was more the sort of go-to-market aspects of SaaS, I think, that we were a bit weaker with. For us, we focused on, originally with our product-led growth. And so we spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley learning from others and so on. And then we took it back, and we sort of, I think, built a team and it worked really well. And then when we went into software sales, again, sort of we had to bring the playbook a bit to Europe. I also think, my background is sort of product, and, I think that Europe has been behind, especially sort of 12, 13 years ago, was behind on product. I don't know if that's the case anymore. So, yeah, absolutely. There are things, and, that many things still, there are some cutting edge things that are happening in Silicon Valley. I think what I like about Europeans is I think they're a little more method to what we do, and a little more long-term thinking, and employees don't move around as much. And that's great stability. I remember, one CEO I was chatting with, based in San Francisco, and he said, look, we hire salespeople, they come in, they work for 6 months, as a new account executive, and then they go across the street and work for New Relic, get another, $40,000 in OT, and I was like, that's crazy. I mean, we still have the original salespeople that we hired in the US. In Boston, we decided to put our office in Boston and not in Stockholm. Sorry, not in San Francisco for that very reason. But particularly in Stockholm, the same. Like, we keep people much longer.
It's interesting. It sounds like you're able to combine kind of like this Nordic DNA by also just using the best parts of this SaaS playbook that's been perfected, I think, mainly in San Francisco, and you've been able to build this global company. I think I remember hearing you on one other podcast talking about how Nordic companies are sold off too quickly, startups. You're obviously not going that route. The plan is to do an IPO and to become a standalone company. Do you think that why is it so? Does this speak to kind of like maybe the immaturity about go to market, and or maybe create a product, but then we want someone to come in, one of the big boys to come in and take it over and do it properly, or do you think that it's this kind of attitude is changing, and maybe the capital markets are also changing, where we will have more standalone software companies in the Nordics and Europe, and there will be less acquisitions of those at earlier stages?
I think it is changing. I mean, I think now that playbook of started here and then moved to the US or London or somewhere else, that's not happening to the same extent anymore, and I think that's fantastic. Yeah, and I remember, I was living in the UK, and like, I read in the Guardian, like King.com is, I think they were going public. UK-based King.com is going public or something like that. And I was like, well, it's a Swedish company. But they put the head office in London, and so on. So, but I think, now with like Spotify and Klarna, and there's some, really fantastic companies that are being built to last in Stockholm. I think it's great. So I think it's gradually changing, and I think that creates a whole ecosystem of, if companies get acquired, maybe they get acquired locally and help build a local ecosystem. Yeah. So I think it's now, it's the time to see that, but it's hard as a SaaS company. You kind of got to get across that sort of $100 million in annualized recurring revenue, and that's a pretty big number. Just getting back 20 million. I think that a lot of companies get stuck there. The growth rate isn't that high. You grow 10% a year at 20 million in ARR. Like, you're not going to get very far. You got to kind of get through that at a high velocity, and then aim at 100 million plus. And then you can be that sort of standalone larger business that can go public and it can acquire other companies.
Why do you think that they get stuck there? Is it a question of they're not getting enough funding? They don't know how to do M&A. They don't, maybe it goes back to what you mentioned about maybe that immaturity regarding go-to-market. What do you think about the key reasons why companies get stuck, and why Funnel has been able to go way beyond that threshold?
I think it has a lot to do with go-to-market. I think that, when you start a company, the first thing you need to do is find product market fit. You should just be focused on that. And not until you have a good product market fit should you start thinking about growing the company at a rapid scale. And to do that, you need to find a good scalable sort of go-to-market channel. And probably you've sort of tinkered with this while you were at product market fit, and you found sort of a combination of product market fit for a market and a go-to-market channel. And you only need one that works and is scalable. And then all you should do is just scale that. You don't know anything else. Just scale it, right? From 1 million to 5 million to 10 million. But then when you start approaching 10 million, actually at some point you got to start to think, okay, well, how far is this go-to-market channel going to take me? And you know, to sort of diversify it, broaden it, rebuild it, and make sure it's going to take you to 20 and beyond at a good, strong growth rate. And I think that's maybe where you know, boards go there and they say, oh, you grew 70% last year. Why don't we make a plan for 80%? And everybody's just sort of spending more money doing the same thing, and nobody's sort of like actually like doing some deep thinking about like how can we actually build this to last. And you got to do that. If you do that, if you can keep proving that you can do it, I think the capital is available. I mean, there's every international investor will invest in the Nordics now, and so. But you of course got to have enough of a large market, and you got to have the right strategy. You got to be differentiated, and so on. So it's a bunch of pieces you got to have to fit together.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Let's talk a little bit about AI. You recently, in the summer, I believe it was, you conducted a big survey among your customers about, you know, how they're thinking about the impact of AI. Could you talk a little bit about what were some of the, in your opinion, key findings from that survey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think essentially there were two, right? So I think the first one was that something like 64% of all marketers said that what they do, or part of what they do, they think over time is going to be taken over by AI. So there was a bit of a worry that people had. And certainly like a strong need to sort of stay in touch with what's happening and up to date with what's happening, using the latest techniques, and actually a worry that, you know, what our competitors doing, we need to make sure we do them. And the other big takeaway was to do AI and do it well. AI relies on data, and you know that's partially why we did this survey, to understand what, you know, we think actually what we do, and providing a good business ready data set is really important for actually be able to use AI to do your marketing. And there was a lot of, you know, that came out strongly in the survey that was very much the case, that you need more now than ever. You need to make sure you got your data strategy in place and a good data platform for underlying what you do.
Do you have any kind of thoughts on what people in that 64% who are, you know, being fearful, are they right to have that fear? And if so, what are kind of, you know, just you from your personal perspective, skill sets that marketers need to acquire to be able to leverage AI as opposed to being replaced by it?
I mean, I think it's going to play out different in depending on exactly what your role is and what we manage to automate. In general, I think it'll raise the bar for what we it'll make us more productive, and we will get better at what we do because we'll have better tools. But it doesn't actually necessarily mean we won't have a job. I think we'll do better marketing, we'll do more with less, and so on. So I think that's the general case. I also think we're still in the early innings of AI, and it's easy to see a demo and go, oh wow, it's gonna have a huge impact, but there's still a lot of quirks, and you know, it's a difference between getting it sort of 70% right and like the 99% that you really need to get it to apply it at scale. But I think just staying up staying really up to date, trying new things, and sort of upskilling. I think this probably great opportunities for the people to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when you start playing with some of these things, you realize that it feels like, the difference between the people who are not using it and people who learn to use it in productivity is going to be huge. Just by playing around with ChatGPT and using it for whatever kind of workflows or task you're doing right now.
And like everything changes. Like the role of a performance marketer 8 years ago was to change bits on keywords, right? And have long spreadsheets of keywords. And now, you kind of give broader guidelines to, for example, Google and Facebook's algorithms, and then you feed them with your first-party data that Google and Facebook don't have access to make them make smarter decisions on your behalf, right? So it's changed. You get your head around that, and your role changes, and then actually your overall role is still to drive conversions for your company and paying for those. So
yeah, totally. Final question for you, Fredrik. You've now been the CEO here for how long has it been for Funnel?
So we started building Funnel 2014.
Okay, so coming up on...
we had a previous company before that. So in total, it's probably around 12 years.
Okay, so that's a sizable period of time, and obviously your role has changed massively. The company has changed massively. You went from working very close to the product. Now you're managing teams of hundreds of people. First question or first part of the question would be, how have you been able to grow in your role, to grow with the company? That's, I guess, fairly uncommon at that massive like of a scale. And second question, how have you been able to stay motivated and not look for something else to do with 12 years in? Like, what keeps you excited about keeping to keep pushing forward?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when it comes to growing, I mean, I would say that the number one thing about being successful with a startup is being great at learning. At like the pace you can learn determines to a large extent the success, because you got to learn a lot of stuff. You come before Funnel, I had started an e-commerce company in the UK. So I part of that, I had a role of like CMO. So I'd kind of understood the problem statement we were doing. That helped. But putting it all together, like you got to kind of learn the industry you're in, that you're trying to change an industry. You got to learn what it is, and then you got to learn what customers want to get product market fit, and you got to learn how to find what go-to-market channels work, and then you got to learn how to hire people and set a good culture. You're just gonna learn. So I think just having that ability to quickly learn, I think, is absolutely key. And it sort of never ends. It's incredible how many development stages a company can go through. Like every 6 months, like it changes, and there's new sort of broad challenges and new development stage. It's the same like with kids. Like they go through so many, every couple of months they change. You could never make all this stuff up. It's so multifaceted, and it's the same. So I think that that absolute learning capability, I think, is important. So how do you learn then? I mean, one, you do it through talking to people and customers and all this stuff. But, I like to also read blog posts. I like to listen to podcasts. And I really like to speak. I think that's the biggest one for me, is to just network with and speak to other CEOs of growth companies and learn from them and their businesses. To me, that's that's hugely valuable, and that's probably what I've learned the most from.
Got it. Do you have, just out of because one thing I've heard and read is that CEO, especially for kind of a growth company, is a very lonely job, because you're facing all these challenges. There's a lot of pressure, a lot of stakeholders to manage, and you're the only one in the company trying to keep it all together. So do you kind of have a support group of CEOs in growth companies that you guys talk to, or anything along those lines?
Yeah, I have a CEO group that we actually sort of meet monthly and chat. It sort of partially acts like that. And then I have a couple of CEOs that I know locally that I meet up with for lunch regularly, and also it's really helpful. And it's kind of like, you do it for a number of years, so you see each other grow. I mean, I think it's actually really, really rewarding. Now then, just to answer your other question, which was, how do you keep motivated? I think your role changes a lot as the company grows. Originally, you're very into the details of, especially me coming with a product background, into the product and the details. And then as it grows, you get a lot of work with the organization. It's a different type of job. And you kind of like, I like creativity and creative work. I think I've gone from, reveling in the creativity of building a product to actually the creativity of designing an organization and a business model and a system. My company is really a system, and tinkering with it and making it all kind of work. And I think that's sort of what I found a lot of, that gives me a lot of satisfaction, and that I find really interested. And then just, the opportunity to see the people in the company come in young, maybe their first job, and then growing. And, we have some people who come in and, we've given them a chance. They didn't have a lot of education. We believed in them, and just seeing them evolve and grow has been fantastically satisfying.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Fredrik, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you. I had a bunch of questions that we didn't even get a chance to go through, so maybe we'll have to do a part 2. But where do people, checking out Funnel, of course, you should mention Genero is a Funnel partner. So if you want help with actually implementing that, you can contact us. You can go check out Funnel on the website. But for people who want to connect with you, is it LinkedIn the best place to go?
Yes, LinkedIn is the social media where I'm the most active. So connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, I'll put a link in the show notes. Once again, Fredrik, thank you so much. Good luck with everything you're doing at Funnel, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thank you for listening. You can find all episodes of The Growth Pod on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts.